Chris Cuomo here.
As
Welcome
do you.
to NewsNation. Yeah, right. I look the same. I look like my father. I used to look like my son. Now I look like my father. Welcome to NewsNation. This is where right and left come to try to be reasonable. So, as I was saying to Elizabeth, the president just made, in my opinion, the most potentially explosive demand of his presidency. Wow, then why haven't you heard about it? Good question. The implications of the move that I'm going to talk to you about tonight could put him sideways with MAGA, put him at odds with his own people, because the can of worms that the president says he wants to open makes Epstein look like an afterthought. And yes, I believe whatever they can put out should come out when it comes to Epstein, but it is nothing compared to what we're about to talk about, okay? The media was all over Bobby Kennedy clashing with the CDC head, right? When he got rid of her, it was a big thing. Why? Because we're addicted to conflict. Negativity has become a proxy for insight, and that's why they are ignoring what really matters. The president's saying, we need, once and for all, for a come-to-Jesus moment about the impact of the COVID vaccine. Did you see this post that he wrote? Many people think the vaccines are a miracle that saved millions of lives. Others disagree. Now, that is a nod to the reality that these others are largely MAGA. And some of it is the reality that they were fed a surreality, okay? They were fed an endless diet of deceptive or cherry-picked data to motivate mis- and disinformation, exploded podcasts, fed that need for you to not trust anybody but them, and that it's all a scam, and that everything you're pissed about, you should be, because they did it to you. Irony of ironies. President Donald John Trump has just asked to have a conversation, to have the data drive it, which we don't hear from him that often, which could hurt him with MAGA, but help him in terms of his legacy. Operation Warp Speed. The president believes it was the signature achievement of our struggle during the pandemic. A lot of his own base disagrees. So the president is saying, I want the truth to be understood once and for all. Think about it. Trump has opened a door to a data-driven dialogue. And again, you stop right there. When's the last time you heard somebody say that? But he believes the data shows the vaccines helped in a massive way. I think he's right. And this move, while putatively on its face is good for Trump, it may not be, because he's going to be sideways with a lot of people in his own base that were selling something very different. But you know who it could be really, really good for? Democrats. Why? Because they would have an opportunity for all of this BS about the pandemic, specifically the vaccine, to once and for all be exposed, the bad faith findings of a lot of people within the MAGA machine. Good for Trump, bad for the fringe that was motivating misinformation, good for Democrats if the Democrats take the suggestion, but they may not. Why? When is anything good for Trump and for Democrats? Never. But this could be. And yet, why isn't it getting attention? Because Democrats don't want to do something that Trump seems to want them to do, because they are stuck in Trump is the devil mode. And you know how I feel about that. It got you to where you are right now. It's not going to get you where you want to be, which is what? Back in power. Because it's got to be about better. It can't just be that Trump is always worse. That's baked in already. It doesn't move the needle. So no one's talking about it. Why? Because they're worried about this on both fringes, right? Now, to me, I don't believe, as the president seems to suggest, that this is about data that he was shown that nobody else has seen. I don't think it's about secret data. I don't even think it's about transparency. I think that Trump's take that everybody should know what I know is kind of a nod to the fact that MAGA hasn't given a damn about the data that's out there, okay? I don't buy it's about secret data. I think he's suggesting that the data's not there because among MAGA with the pod bros, they pretend like there's no data, except what they cherry pick and twist to make it seem like you were injecting a poison or that may have had nanotechnology in it so Big Brother could track you. So those on the right, on the fringe who peddled this, don't want it because they don't want to risk being proven wrong. And worse, intentionally deceptive. But on the left, there's this reluctance because if Trump says he wants it, they must want to reject it. Now, I hope the president says this again and again and again. Major drug companies, mainstream scientists, doctors on all sides, let's have a dialogue about the data, okay? Oh, but Bobby Kennedy Jr. is an anti-vaxxer. Has he given you reason to believe that? Yes, but he says he is not. And have you noticed what he said about the president's post that I'm outlining to you right now? Nothing. You know why? Because if you think he's going to say something bad about the COVID vaccine when he knows what it means to the president, you don't understand politics. And I'm not criticizing Bobby. I don't think he has a lot of reason to criticize the COVID vaccine the way is often done on the right fringe. But maybe I'm wrong. Let's go through the data. And yeah, Bobby's going to change his disposition when he wants to please a different audience. I mean, that's politics. That's reality of confirmation. But right now, he has an opportunity. You want to make this data-driven? Let's do it. Let's have the data dialogue. Let's have a reckoning. And I think it's really interesting in terms of political analysis that the president wants something that may be good for him, but even better for his opponents, because it will put the president sideways with his own base. Today, only 30% of Republicans say vaccines are safe. On the flip, 90% of Democrats say they're safe. Why? I don't know, there's like 100 reasons. Most of them don't matter. But for the president, this is about his legacy, okay? And the data is not hidden, all right? We know things about the reality. Could we know more? Of course. Should we discuss more? Of course. But at the end of 2020, what do we know? There were 200,000 new cases of COVID. That was the daily average, right? Hundreds of millions get vaccinated. 95% drop in the daily COVID cases. Herd immunity, it's not that simple. It can't be that simple. Wasn't that simple in any country. Studies show that serious illness plummeted. Hospitals emptied. Lethality dropped. That's why we're told COVID-19 vaccines saved lives, maybe 3 million lives. Do you have to accept that number? No, but we should discuss it. 18 million people out of the hospital because of less serious illness, lessen costs to the tune of $1 trillion. These are all estimates. Why not do better? Why don't we have the data? Why don't we have the discussion? I think the president is right on the facts, but not the feelings within the MAGA base, who are so attached on the fringe to anti-vax sentimentality. Now, it's usually the opposite, right? I kind of believe the president's wrong about the facts, but he's seizing the feeling right within his base, and maybe within the majority in an 80-20 cultural issue. I think he's got an amazing feel for that. But I say, let's have the reckoning, because to me, it's not just about the COVID vaccine. This is a road I want traveled, a reckoning on all the policy calls of the pandemic. We've never had it. Congress can't do it. They can't even figure out, who to blame. They want to blame Tony Fauci for everything. It's nonsense. Let's go through the policy calls, the shutdowns, the mandates, the schools, the loans, because we learn nothing to help us the next time. This is a win-win-win. It's good for Trump. It could be good for the Democrats. And for the pod people who say they want to be about the truth, this is the chance, okay? And for the rest of us, for the majority of us, give us a chance to do better the next time by learning from the last time. So I want to bring in somebody who has taught me so much about what's happening here, and his site looks at this 24/7, 365, fair, fair, fair. His name is Daniel O'Connor. He's the founder of TrialSite News, S-I-T-E, T-R-I-L-S-I-T-E News. Has extensively analyzed, is showing what comes out on a regular basis. Dan, thanks for joining me, brother, and thank you for being helpful to me in this and so many other ways.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Thanks for really having a great, objective media. We appreciate it.
So Dan, am I overhyping this, or do you believe this is the moment that we've been waiting for, where we can finally open the books on the vaccine and see what the data shows, ask the questions that need to be asked, and figure out the reality of whether this was a poison or whether it was part of the solution?
100%, Chris. I mean, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I was thrilled to see it. Our society became so divided during COVID. It's so polarized, Chris, as you know it. We've talked about this. And so the challenge, Chris, is nuance, right? Two things can be correct at the same time. The COVID vaccines were accelerated, but they did help a lot of people. There's overwhelming evidence. There's hundreds of studies from different countries, okay, that show that they had an impact that was good. On the other side, if you vaccinate billions of people, there are going to be externalities. There will be rare but real effects. And you can't just shut those people off. If you do, and you gaslight them or pretend they don't exist, well, guess what? That causes a problem too, does it not?
100%. And look, I was just listening to the FDA guy on with Elizabeth Vargas saying, yeah, none of these are real studies. They're not double-blind, placebo, whatever it is. Now, that's just not true, but I'm fine with more. And I don't believe that the president meant to suggest, I can't think for him, obviously, but there's no secret data. I don't believe he was shown things that they don't want anybody else to see. But don't you think this is interesting, if you put your political hat on for 1 second, that the president wants something that he believes he's on the right side of that will be good for him, but it could be bad for him with the base, because these pod people that he put on the map, this was their issue. This is where it all started for them. The government's lying. This isn't even a vaccine. This is poison. It's making more people sick. It killed more than it saved.
There's a lot of that information spreading around, Chris, and I don't see it. So I agree with you. I think it's a very noble thing that President Trump is doing. We became so divided over COVID. Let's get the data out. Let's understand, how it helps. If there are challenges, let's understand that. Let's help people. I'm on the board of React 19. It's a patient advocacy group. Let's help people. Let's study the problem, long COVID and post-COVID syndrome, post-COVID vaccine syndrome. So yes, politically, it could open up problems. I have run into lots of tension with folks that think it's a bioweapon. I've got op-eds out there saying this is not a bioweapon. This is a countermeasure that was developed with a novel pathogen that was new.
Well, Dan, you've been all over it. You cover it from all sides, and I'm going to request your help once again. Let's keep pushing for what the president asked for. I am here for it. You want a reckoning? Let's do it. All right, I'll be in touch with you. TrialSite, TrialSite. Now, while Dan's been talking and I've been listening, Ben Shapiro is here with me, and I want him to hear this interview, and I want him to hear me talk to the guy with Tony Fauci's job now as the director of the NIH, because he has some takes on this, and then you and I will discuss this, your new book, and why you're so damn relevant. Ben is here with me in studio. He's listening, but I want to bring in the director of the National Institutes of Health, Jay Bhattacharya. Okay? Doc, it's good to have you.
Good to be here. Thanks.
So first, what is your take on the president's take that, hey, the companies tell me that Operation Warp Speed was the biggest difference maker positively in the pandemic, and I want everybody to understand the data the way they do. What do you think of that?
I think it's really healthy to have transparency about what the drug companies that were involved in Operation Warp Speed know. It's also really healthy to open up a discussion, an honest scientific discussion, uncensored, on the evidence on the COVID vaccine. I think I was just listening to your last guest talk. I mean, he's absolutely right. A lot of people have lost trust in all vaccines as a consequence of essentially misstatements. Well, I don't know what you want to call them, including things like, the vaccine stops you from getting and spreading COVID. Remember all the mandates, Chris, that were in place. I mean, I think that kind of level of distrust I've never in my long career in public health have seen before. And what the president's doing is very, very healthy. Transparency is the way forward.
But you know so much already, Mr. Director, that would show that, one, not just the low fruit, like there's no nanotechnology in the vaccine that tracks you, or any of the things that have killed more people than it may have helped. There's no data basis for this. This is propaganda. Do you agree or disagree with the president's main assertion, which is the companies tell me that the vaccine helped and made a positive difference in this country, and I want people to know that? Is he wrong?
Well, what he's saying is, let's open up and look at the data. I mean, I think if you look, for instance, at older people, it probably, I mean, I'm almost pretty convinced that it did make a positive difference. If you look at young men who got myocarditis at high rates, but weren't really dying of COVID at very high rates, it's less clear. Pregnant women. There's a lot of data that the public hasn't really seen, and it's worth looking at. It's going to be a nuanced answer, Chris. I think Operation Warp Speed was absolutely the right thing to do in 2020. If you were in the middle of a new novel virus spreading around, and you have the capacity to deploy the amazing scientists to try to address that at a rapid pace, it was definitely the right call to make in 2020. When the data started coming in 2021 and the mandates started going out, well, that's when we started getting into a lot of trouble. Having an understanding of what was known at what points in time,
yes.
And also making sure that people who were injured get an honest, an honest take, rather than like censor the kind of the way they were in the Biden administration. I think it's, again, Chris, I mean, for me, the most important thing is we need to have public health be honest with the American public. That's to me, that's the upshot of the president's take, which I really just admire.
Listen, I'm here for it. You're always welcome here, Jay. I believe conversation is the cure. I got 2 more other boxes I want to check in, and I'll let you go, but you're always welcome here, and I appreciate it, Mr. NIH Director. The first one is what I don't like is pendular overreactions in politics. mRNA has become a dirty word. You know it isn't. You know it is the key to a lot of medical research going forward. And it seems to me that cutting the funding is about politics, not about public health policy, because what are the chances that any of the things we need to stave off in the future will have nothing to do with mRNA, which now may not be researched the same way because of the moves that are being made?
Well, at the NIH, we're still researching mRNA. So, for instance, for cancer, it's potentially quite a useful tool. I mean, there's a lot of research in promising places to look. So we're not cutting research off. What Secretary Kennedy recently did is he cut off production contracts for mRNA vaccines that, for COVID that people just aren't using, Chris. I mean, why should the American people be spending
But isn't there a
so
research
much
component
money
also
I think
to the funding cuts?
I mean, it was mostly with BARDA contracts. The NIH, we've not cut off research contract or research on the mRNA. We're still, as I said, working on our mRNA for other technologies and other potential uses. And of course, mRNA. This is not just for the vaccines, but the mRNA itself is is a really important area of research. There's nothing that's going to change us from looking into promising areas of science, including that. But for public health, we have to restore public trust, and putting money into vaccine platforms that the public largely doesn't trust. I don't see really the logic in that.
Well, the logic was that making people not trust government is a great way to ensure a power base, right? And we've seen it on the right and the left, where making people believe that the enemy is the other guy can be very palatable, and I think that's been at play here. I see that in the attacks on Tony Fauci. Do I think Tony Fauci should have been made the messenger for COVID? Nope. I told him personally at the time that white coats and politics do not mix. Because the rules for you guys, when you're doing what you do, is, hey, the facts change, your opinion changes. That's death in politics. Yet, Trump and then Biden echoed it, made Fauci the main messenger, and now I believe you guys have made him a boogeyman. I don't think there's any proof that Tony Fauci cashed in from the pandemic, and yes, I hear that from MAGA land all the time. You've had a mixed reaction. You think you understand the pardon. I know why Biden pardoned him, but I think it's pathetic that it was necessary. But do you believe that there's a real case to be made that Tony Fauci was a problem during the pandemic?
Chris, I don't know if you remember, but you invited me on your Sirius show back during the pandemic when Alive was really having a difficult time getting any traction on the left. And I really did appreciate that, because I agree with you. I think that science it shouldn't be political. It's not political. You know, neither the left nor the right own science. It's not a Democrat science or Republican science. I believe very fundamentally that science needs to earn the trust of the people by sticking to what really science is about and what it does best. And sometimes the answers the left is going to not like, and sometimes the answers the right is not going to like. That's neither here nor there. To me, the most important thing is, is to stay focused on the things that I know will work and help the American people, which is to do excellent gold standard science. That's my focus.
Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, good luck to you at the NIH and doing the work of the people. You are always welcome here to discuss it.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me on.
All right, I'm going to take a break. I want to say hello to Ben Shapiro. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you got to hear all that. You notice you didn't say anything about Fauci.
I did. He was very careful.
Yeah, right. All right, so we're going to discuss that when we come back. 4.5 minutes. Ben Shapiro has a new book. He's got a huge platform. He is one of the voices that resonate all over this country. Why, and what does he think of this moment? Next.
kids are running. They shooting. We can't have no fun in Chicago, man. No fun, man. This is terrible.
We need to bring reinforcements in to establish law and order.
And if that means bring our National Guard in for presence, then so be it, because we got to do something. Children are dying.
One of the reasons that the three dumbest words in modern politics were defund the police is because you go to any high crime area anywhere in the country, and the people who are living there want policing the most. Good policing, legal policing, compassionate policing. But the idea of anything it takes to make us safer is going to resonate there. And that's misunderstood in our politics, and it's misunderstood about the story of Chicago. I don't like hearing about Chicago all the time from the right because they don't adjust their policies to help those populations. But they aren't wrong to point out that there's plenty of shooting and killing right there. This weekend in Chicago, 58 shot, 8 dead. And for the governor there, Pritzker, who I think's got a lot of political horsepower and potential, to say, leave us alone, we've got this handled, makes you look like you're not just defending the status quo, you're defending crime. Okay? And that is this moment that the president, by his wit or by fortune or by randomness, has stumbled on probably the biggest cultural issue of the moment. What are we going to do about crime? Everybody cares about it. I want to bring in one of the leading voices in the conservative movement, author of a new book, Lions and Scavengers. It says Avengers in my prompter, but I won't be tricked. Lions and Scavengers, the true story of America, Ben Shapiro. It's good to have you here. Thank you for taking the opportunity. Congratulations on the success and the book. Who are the lions? Who are the scavengers?
So the basic idea, I think, is that lions are people who are dutiful, who want to build things, who believe that they actually have a role to play, an active role to play in making their own lives and the lives of people around them better. And scavengers are people who look at all the problems that they have and they blame that on the system. Then the idea is that the system has to be torn down. And I'm not sure that, it's about individuals as a whole falling into lions versus scavengers. Some do, some don't. Or even civilizations, some are more lion-esque, some are more scavenger-like. But even within every individual human being, you have to wake up in the morning and decide whether to be active in your own life, whether to be a person who makes the world around you better, the society around you stronger, who makes your family and your community better, or whether you're the kind of person who is going to look at all the problems in your life, externalize those, blame the system, and then unify with others to tear down all of the institutions that have allowed you freedom and success. And I think that you've seen across the West particularly the rise in what I call in the book the coalition of scavengers, people who really have nothing in common except that they hate the systems, and the systems must be torn to the ground. They don't even know necessarily what they're going to build afterward. The thing they know is that all the things that are going wrong in their life are wrongs that are done to them. They are the oppressed. They've been exploited. And the only way to fix things is first to tear everything down.
So ordinarily, I would have said, oh, yeah, that's a straight play for Shapiro because I ascribe those motivations to the far fringes of the left. But now, that's like MAGA mantra that you just said. We got to tear down all the institutions. It's all got to die, burn it down, drain the swamp, deep state. I mean, this is the rhetoric of the right, not the left.
Well, I mean, I think it's the rhetoric of both, meaning I think that there's a lot of that on the left. I think if you look at Zoran Mamdani, for example, in New York, talking about what he wants to do in New York, it's very much along those lines. And then there certainly is sort of...
Why is it working, by the way?
Because I think that there are a lot of people, particularly in New York, who've been made dependent on government largesse and government regulations and government programs that are already in his category. And then they look at all the problems and they say, well, let's hand it to somebody who promises to fix all of that easily. Right? The only I can solve aspect to our politics, again, this runs across the gamut. This is really not a right-left divide.
Because that is literally what the president said during his first campaign was only I can fix it.
And I think Barack Obama said similar things. Joe Biden has said similar things. It's become a really terrible hallmark of American politics for politicians to come along and say, you've got problems in your life. Those problems are not your problems. Those problems are things that I personally am going to solve by restructuring all the institutions. And so I think that, what a conservative traditionally would say, the sort of G.K. Chesterton conservative would say...
Wrote the book Orthodoxy.
That when you're walking through a field and you see a fence, if you don't know why the fence is there, if you're a conservative, you first have to discover why the fence is there before you decide to remove it. And the sort of traditionally non-conservative move is you see the fence, you don't know why it's there, and you just uproot it without any further thought. And I think that we've become, unfortunately, addicted to sort of uprooting things without thinking about why that's there first. Now, that doesn't mean that every institution deserves to survive. Some really are corrupted. There are things out there that are bad and that need to be fixed. But the sort of unthinking belief that everything needs to be torn down, even the great institutions of America, even the most basic things, family, church, the checks and balances of the American government. You tear all these things down, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt afterward.
Does put you a little bit of odds with your side of the spectrum, which is part of the problem with binary politics, as you're identifying, is that it's all gotten exaggerated. It's all fringe. The conversation you were listening to up at the top, generations past, the idea of, well, yeah, let's have a discussion about what the data says and where there are gaps and where there aren't and what do we learn, what was good, what was bad, that was a no-brainer. You would have done that in due course. Now we avoid it like the plague. Nobody's even covering this story tonight.
Well,
Only me.
I think one of the things that was fascinating there is listening to Dr. Bhattacharya, who actually was victimized by Dr. Fauci, who actually tried to shut down dissemination of his Great Barrington Declaration, which was an alternative strategy for addressing the pandemic by essentially allowing healthier populations to trench back into the population. Even if they were going to get COVID, they weren't really going to suffer from it. It would move through the population faster. Dr. Fauci really pushed back behind the scenes against the dissemination of that. That's probably why Dr. Bhattacharya is now at the head of NIH. But Dr. Bhattacharya is not saying we need to dissolve NIH. He's saying we need to fix NIH. And I think that is a better approach in the most successful country in the history of the world, is to look at the institutions and say, how do we fix these? How do we correct these? Now, again, there may be institutions that are so thoroughly destroyed that basically noting that they're dead is just being the coroner, not the killer. But we have to be very careful about how we address these things.
Fixing is hard.
Yes.
Breaking is easy. Saying broken is easiest, right? I think we see that playing out in crime right now. I would even suggest it a little bit with the populists on the left, that just as was true with MAGA, which was misunderstood and disrespected, the grievance is real. They are right to complain about what they're complaining about on the right during MAGA, culturally driven, but economically. On the left now, affordability. They're right about what's wrong, but they are wrong about how to make it right. And that's what I see with the crime also. I think the president is having a genius moment of focusing on this. Presidents don't usually mess with local crime because it's a local problem. I don't think the military is the right fix, but the Democrats are spending time saying this is proof he's a despot. That's who brings in the military. This is a banana republic. Instead of saying, hey, work with them, but not with the military. Here's what you ask for.
Yes.
Better ideas.
I mean, it is sort of astonishing. The president does have a genius for getting his opponents to take the 20 side of every 80-20 issue. And the president will say, no men in women's sports. And almost reflexively, you'll see people on the left say, no, that can't be. We must allow men in women's sports. Or the president will say, crime in Baltimore is really bad. And people say, really? How dare you say that crime in Baltimore... I mean, crime in Baltimore is not good. And so the opponents of President Trump have been essentially handing him victory after victory, particularly during his second term, by immediately assuming that the American public are going to take the opposite side of whatever issue he decides to take on. And that's wrong. I mean, I think the reason that he won the last election cycle is because he actually grabbed the moderate middle. If you took a look positionally at where President Trump was on nearly every issue in the last election cycle, he was much closer to the moderate middle than Kamala Harris was, actually.
Why? Because the incumbent has to own the status quo. So Biden/Harris were positioned to have to do one of two things. Really brave, which say we didn't get it done, but we can the next time. We were coming out of it and it was hard. Or defend everything that is. And that gave President Trump, or at that time, former President Trump, an opportunity to grab the reality that people weren't happy with the status quo. Let's do this. Let me take a break, and then I'm going to give you a very unique opportunity, mostly because you got like 100 guys protecting you here. When we come back, I want to hear what Ben Shapiro says he doesn't like about how we do the job, meaning me, not NewsNation, because I know you love NewsNation. But let's talk about where we disagree and why. And thank you for being here for Do It, and I know you're going to want to see it. We'll come right back. We'll talk about whatever's on his mind. Next. Here I am with Ben Shapiro, author of the new book, Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. He just said he's a lion, I'm a scavenger. I was about to attack him, but he's got like 10 guys here, so I left it alone. Ben, congratulations on the book. Thank you for being with us. What do you think about what we're doing here, and how does it change how you used to view what I was doing?
I mean, I think that you've really done a courageous job of moving away from what I assumed were your political priors over at CNN. I think that CNN obviously was pushing people in a particular direction in the hosting channel, toward a much more left-wing viewpoint. That's what the entire network seemed to be. And I think that you've gone admirably independent here, I have to say. It's pretty cool.
What do you make of the challenge of the fact that the middle is death, cooperation is death, accommodation is death, nuance is death? you have to be all in, one side or the other. It's the only way to get paid. It's the only way to get heard.
I mean, I'm not sure that that's true. And the reason I say that's not true, it may be true in the short term. I'm not sure that it's true in the long term. I think that, there's always the hot thing of the moment. The reality is that the number of people generally in America who engage in politics on enough of a granular level, they're watching you every night or listening to me every day, that's a small percentage of the population. And the difference is between your ratings and somebody else's ratings, it's a rounding error when you're looking at the American population. So, we're all in this industry looking very hard at those numbers, but I think that we have to realize that when you go out and touch grass and sort of the broad spectrum of how Americans behave with one another, as I encourage a lot of people, just sometimes turn off the TV, turn off the internet, go talk to people in your community, go to church, actually hang out with actual human beings. And what you'll see is there's a lot more independence out there than there is on the internet.
What is the biggest difference between Ben Shapiro today and Ben Shapiro 5-7 years ago?
I think I've been pretty consistent in my principles, actually. So I won't say that I've changed a lot in terms of my principles. I think older and wiser is one thing, a little bit more considered in probably how I make my arguments, because I want to make sure that I'm using as many of the correct words as I can. Doesn't mean I won't make mistakes, but I will say that I'm one of the only commentators that I've ever heard of who has like a running list on their website of all the mistakes and dumb things I think I've ever said, where I try to explain them or apologize for them if I think that I've done something wrong. And so I think if you're not getting better at your job over the course of time, then you're not doing it right. And I've been doing this since I was 17 years old. I'm now 41, so I can't claim to be a youngster anymore. Right? I have 4 kids ranging from 2 to 11. And so as you get older, you try to be a little more careful with your words because you're running out of time to say them. So,
did you ever think that you'd be in the position where you are now, where it is dangerous for you to have a yarmulke on your head?
I don't want to overstate that danger because, again, this is the greatest country in the world for Jews. It's an amazing, amazing country. And I'm lucky to be able to live and work in this country. Obviously, I've lived here all my life. My family goes all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century. They got here in like 1903, 1904. And it's an amazing country. And so saying that you can't walk down the street, I think that's an exaggeration. Not in certain places. In certain places, it's not. The fact that you have seen rising anti-Semitism on the left and also on sort of the horseshoe theory, right? It's deeply troubling. And again, I think it does speak to a conspiratorial view of the world that I talk about in the book as the scavenger mentality, this idea that there is this sort of shadowy group that's running all of the levers of power. And that's the reason why I'm not getting what I want. That's the reason why the world isn't constructed the way I want it to be. And the reality is that the sort of biblical worldview, and I think the Western worldview, is predicated generally on the notion that in a free country, which America is, if you've got a problem in your life, you should first look in the mirror and determine whether you can fix that problem before you say that it's the Constitution of the United States or some shadowy, unnamed group behind the scenes pulling all the strings. Because in all likelihood, that's nonsense. And there's a difference between conspiracies, which exist and there's evidence for, and conspiracy theories, where people are just asking questions. I've ripped on my show on these sort of just asking questions. The job is to ask questions in order to seek answers. If you're just asking questions and any evidence that comes in is of no consequence to you, you're not doing your job and you're not really asking questions. You're positing a theory, but you don't have the courage of your convictions.
The real problem for me is the manifestation of gotcha. That I'm going to take one little thing and I'm going to twist it to make it everything. And it'll usually play to fear. And that's why I have been playing, and I understand that there's a sensitivity issue with it. I want the insensitivity, which is, I thought Jews control the media. If Jews control the media, why are you losing the media battle over the war in the Middle East? And I did not think, do I think this is the greatest country in the world for Jews? It's probably second after Israel, and that's because all the other ones suck, because I hear people all the time saying things to people who have yarmulkes on, an open demonstration of their faith as Orthodox, killer. I've never heard that before.
I will say it's a unique time. It for sure is. I didn't have to think about this sort of stuff. I think it gets worse. I would be surprised if
I don't think the war ends. I think it gets worse, and I think it plays into the midterms.
So I think actually very little of this has to do with the war. I think the war was a triggering event, but I don't think that the underlying sentiment is really due to the war as much as it is to a rising mentality that, again, has been played up by politicians and commentators on both sides, that somehow the world is screwing you and there is a secret exploiter class who's making your life miserable, and the people who are disproportionately successful in the United States must be the people who are responsible for your plight. And that's always an easy political play. And by the way, I don't think restricted to Jews. I think that you're seeing it in some areas being blamed on, for example, Indians, right? And I think that's a manifestation of the same sort of sentiment. In other countries, it's blamed on what Thomas Sowell called like middlemen Chinese, in minority Chinese in countries where Chinese are not the majority, and they end up being sort of economic middlemen. So it's not a rarity in world history, but I think it is rearing its ugly head right now.
What is the defining issue that will make the biggest difference in American life in the near term?
I mean, the number one issue is whether we are going to be grateful or envious. And that really is the sole problem. Are we going to be grateful for the great gift that we have in America and what we've been given and what the freedom and the prosperity and the private property and the equality before the law? Or are we going to be so envious of one another that we decide to basically destroy this whole thing? And you can see the meltdown happening. I mean, really. And I think you were talking before about that pendulum politics. I use the same sort of metaphor all the time. The fact that our politics is swinging so wildly right now that every sin of the other side justifies that sin on my side, but a little more so. That spells doom. I mean, that really is a death spiral. At some point, there's going to have to be a group of people, right, left, and center. And I don't really care where you are politically as much as I care where you are in terms of your soul. What are you going to do to make the country stronger? Are you going to weave better social fabric? Are you going to defend the fundamental principles of the civilization? Are you going to take risks and innovate and live with the downside of risks if you fail without blaming the system? If you do all those things, America will thrive. If you don't do those things and you decide instead that the system is to blame, you're going to wreck the country. And that we are the last best hope of humanity. So if we go, it's going to get real bad.
I think the key for us is to remember the messiness of the experiment. And the reason I say conversation is the cure is not because it's alliterative, although that helps, but because it doesn't matter that you and I disagree about the answer. If it's fundamental, this person is not equal to me, we're going to have a problem. If it's about the best way to do things and you and I disagree that this is the wrong fix, that's not the issue. The issue is how we disagree about it and how I make it personal about you and I say things about you. It's not allowed on the floor of Congress. It's not allowed in court. It's not allowed in any real officiated debate setting, and there are reasons for that. And I think the more we get back to that, you are always welcome here. We may well not agree about things. You may not like it. I may not like it, but how we handle it is everything. And you're welcome here for the conversation.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Ben Shapiro, good luck with the book. Best to the family.
Thanks.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. I know this looks like a no-brainer. They're calling this trend the ding-dong ditch. I did this when I was a kid. People used to put like little flaming bags of, I don't know, I'll tell you another time. But I think that we're missing something in this situation where the guy shot the kid who was playing Ring and Run. I think the biggest part of it is being missed. I'll explain next. All right, here are the facts. The cops say Julian Guzman, 11, and his 10-year-old cousin knocked on a house's front door 3 times one night. Ring and run, right? The last time the boys start running, the owner is in the front yard hiding behind a fence. The owner now becomes a shooter. Reportedly, he shoots once at the ground and then shoots in the boys' directions, hits the 11-year-old in the back. He dies at the hospital the next day. The shooter is 42-year-old Gonzalo Leon Jr., charged with murder. Leon is an Army veteran. At least 20 guns and tactical gear, including smoke grenades, were found during a search of his home. The instinct is to lock him up and throw away, and the more facts you learn, it seemed like his wife was afraid, the kid was afraid, he was a known quantity that was set up to do something like this, and that's what I think is the part of the story that's not getting the attention. I want to discuss with former state attorney for Palm Beach, Counselor David Aronberg. David, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be back with you.
So I get that this is a slam dunk case, that no castle doctrine, no stand your ground. This guy was outside, he was shooting at kids, and he killed one of them. And that is your take, that is the disposition of this situation.
Yes, as a former prosecutor, this is an easy case to try, although there's still responsibility here of the parents and anyone else who is pushing this TikTok meme, this viral game of ding dong ditch, which has led to multiple deaths now and murder charges against people who are inside their homes minding their own business when they get pranked like this, and then it evolves into a tragedy.
So why didn't they kill me when I was a kid? Why didn't they kill you when you were a kid? I'll give you that you're in a different generation because you're young. Why are they killing them now? See, that's the part that I think matters here, Counselor, which is that this guy was a known quantity. Somebody or multiple people knew that this guy shouldn't have those weapons, and I'm not blaming it on him being a veteran. I love the men and women who decide to sacrifice in that level of service for ourselves. But when you are veteran or otherwise, someone who's a known quantity, we have to start addressing that part of it, and we don't.
And there is a way to address it. Red flag laws. They exist in many states. We don't have it at the federal level. It's designed to take guns and ammunition away from people who are a threat to themselves or others. And there's due process there. And it works in red states and blue, including Florida. In fact, our governor at the time, Rick Scott, pushed it after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas massacre, and it passed over the objections of the NRA. But at the federal level, the NRA is really strong, and they would not allow this to pass. It's going to take real political courage to get this through.
Nothing changes if nothing changes. And we're not a gun law away from making this stop, but we are a culture fix away of giving people the empowerment of see something, say something, but you got to give them a mechanism to make it real. Otherwise, It's just like ratting. And that's the part of this story that I think we got to focus on that's not getting any attention. How do we make it better? Dave Aronberg, thank you for your analysis. Appreciate you being on the show as always.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, 4 minutes, 45 seconds. We'll be right back. So you want a little inside scoop here at NewsNation? So here I am at the studio, and all of a sudden I start to hear these whispers. Here comes the bus. Here comes the bus. And all of a sudden, someone I don't really know comes over and says, get up. So they get me up. They move me off to the side. And they say, you stay here because the bus is coming. I said, the bus is coming. Batya Unger Sargon is who they were talking about, in for Leland Vittert. I literally had to move because she was coming. That's how you know the bus is a big deal.
Chris, I watched the show. You were incredible. The interview with Ben Shapiro was amazing. The opening was just classic Chris. It was hard-hitting, but in pursuit of common ground. I hate you a little bit because you're so good at what you do, and I don't think I will ever be as good. Thank you so much for the great show.
That is very gracious, and don't worry, you'll soon have much better reasons to hate me.